Y'all, hot girl summer is getting ready to end, and y'all know that your girl had to do at least one more look to commence hot girl summer. But if you are ready to see what I created, just keep on watching, all right?
I got it like that. Yeah, I got it like that. I got it like that. Baby, I'm a big deal, I got it like that. I did it again, who told you that I was finished? Fresh off the plane.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video, I'm gonna keep this video short, sweet, and to the point. I'm gonna be giving you a pattern review and a sew along to this new look pattern, 6532. Now in this video, the sew along is only for the pants. That's the only view that I did on this entire pattern. So, if you are new to the channel, welcome. Hello, Ciao, Guten, Aloha, Hola, Konnichiwa, Gwaan, Sabonani, Shalom, Bonjour, Terve. If you're returning, you guys know what to do. Quick snack, something to drink. Grab those notebooks to take notes only. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it. All right, so for this video, I'm only going to be talking about the pants, which is view C on this pattern, new look 6532. Now this pattern is only for pattern pieces. Oh my God, yes. So let's talk about it, going ahead and talking about the pattern description. Now I'm gonna get my own because I have not looked at the Simplicity website, and I don't even think this pattern is available on the simplicity.com website. So what this pattern is you have basically a coordinating set. You have view A, the top, which is sleeveless. You will finish off with bias tape or seam binding, whatever you want to call it. And then for view A, there is a buttonhole closure in the back. So you're going to need some elastic cording and a 1/2 inch button in order to do that back button closure. On view B, it is a jacket. It's no notions for that. It is just basically like an open pullover jacket that you can use to just kind of like throw over the top. So I really like that, but I didn't want to do that. So then view C, you have the pants, and on the pants you have a kind of like a slim but wide leg pants with a yoke. Now the yoke serves as your waistband, which I like that. And I made a hack to it. Well, I'm going to say I made a hack, but I just made a style modification, which we will talk about in modification. So that is the pattern description that I'm going to give you for new look 6532. Let's go ahead and get into skill level. So this is not a rated skill level, but I'm going to say that for these pants, the skill level that I'm going to choose for it is rated as beginner friendly, easy to sew. Okay. If I do say so myself, because this is easy to sew. All right. And the reason why I feel that it is easy to sew, not only because I'm providing you with the sew along, but it's for pattern pieces. And I feel like you can do this. The only thing that you need to be comfortable with doing is the zipper. That's it. If you're comfortable putting in an invisible zipper, this pattern you could sew up in every bit of less than 2 hours. When I say that, this outside of filming, I could have already been done with these pants in 2 hours, okay? So let's go ahead and talk about the fabric used. So in terms of the fabric for these pants, I use some Ankara fabric from the stash. The print is from House of Mami Wata. I think I picked this print up, I want to say probably November timeframe, January timeframe. I don't know. I got to go back to my receipt. However, I love this print, and when I say that I made 3 items out of this print, just stay tuned for the rest of the items that I made outside of the pants, okay? I'll share the other 2 items with you up on the channel here shortly, but it's some Ankara print that I chose, which is 100% cotton, that I picked up from House of Mami Wata. Let's talk about pattern pieces. So in terms of pattern pieces, 4 pattern pieces. So you have pattern piece number 13, the front, 14, the back, 15, the yoke front, and pattern piece number 16, the yoke back. 4 pattern pieces, and that's it, okay? So super easy pattern to do. Let's talk about pattern sizing. So in terms of pattern sizing, it's 1 envelope, and on the pattern is size 8 to 18 is the only size that you have. Now the size that I cut is a size 18. However, I had to size up this pattern. Of course, y'all know your girl sized up at the hips, and I think I sized up at the waist as well. Now, remind you, I sewed this pattern about a week and a half ago, so I'm just now getting around to, after doing the batch cut and videos and stuff like that, I'm just now getting around to the pictures, because last weekend when I wanted to take photos, it was raining. So I had to wait a week, and I'm glad that I waited a week because we have nice sun for a couple of days for me to take photos in the next couple of days as well, because I got to take some more photos tomorrow for something else, for the pattern hackathon, as a matter of fact. So yeah, we got to do that as well. Let's go ahead. Oh, so the size that I cut is a size 18, but I did kind of grade up. So if it was on the pattern, I would say that the size that I really should have probably cut was a size 20, but I had to size up at the waist and at the hips to fit what I want, okay? And to get a good fit. Let's talk about modifications. So in terms of modifications, I extended the yoke band by 1.5 inches. You will see that in the sew along because I wanted my yoke front and yoke back to be a little higher. To come on, y'all know it is hot girl summer, but we ain't trying to show like all of our stomach or anything, even though I'm a hot girl, but I like to be a little bit on the conservative side sometimes. So we not trying to have, you know, rolls, dinner rolls and all that stuff hanging out. So that's why I extended it by 1.5 inches to give me more like a 2-inch waistband or yoke piece instead of that normal 1.5 inch. If you know what I mean, if you know, you know. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about, did it look like the photos or the drawings on the pattern envelope? Absolutely, absolutely. The only difference is my yoke band is a little bit taller. Now, on the pants, it looks like the zipper for the pants is on the right side. Maybe it's on the left side, I don't know. It's kind of hard to see from the model, but I think in the pattern, on the pattern instructions, it wants you to put the zipper on the right-hand side. However, I'm right-handed, so with me being right-handed, I made sure that my zipper is on the left side, so I can unzip on the left side instead of crossing my right hand over to unzip it. It just didn't make sense for me, for my liking. So I made sure that my zipper is on the left-hand side, but yes, it does look like the photos or the drawings on the pattern envelope. Let's talk about instructions. Are the instructions easy to follow? Yes, but I really didn't follow them, kind of, sort of. But I looked at the instructions, and for the most part, they are easy to follow. I don't think you will get tripped up if you were to just read the instructions whatsoever. Although y'all know that these instructions are, some instructions are what we call tea, trash, okay? So I know you guys are always like saying like, hey, Rochelle, could you guys do a sew along for this? Let me say this. We have what you call big thanks. We have what you call a tip jar. Like, y'all, it takes a lot of time to do these sew alongs. So I'm just going to put it out there. Like, could a girl get a tip? Could a girl get a tip? That's all I'm going to say. But I enjoy doing sew alongs for you guys, but give me some grace, okay? Give me some grace with how much I have put out, okay? That's all I'm going to say. Let's talk about likes and dislikes. So dislike, there's really not a dislike for this pattern. It's all likes, but I will say, well, let's talk about that in another section. But first time experiences, do I have any first time experiences? Absolutely not. No first time experience. You guys know I actually love doing pants. I'm putting more pants in my wardrobe, so there's no first time experience whatsoever. Would I sew this pattern again? Absolutely, but with some style changes. First things first, I said it in the sew along, but I'm gonna say it right here. If you want to move the zipper from the side to the back, you're gonna have to do two things. First things first is you're going to need to sew up both side seam and move that zipper to the back of your pants. However, if you do that, you need to make sure that you move the zipper on your yoke front and your yoke back. Now, I kind of explained how to move the zipper to the back in the sew along, but I did not explain to you how to move the zipper on your yoke front, yoke back. Now, I will do this in an upcoming video when I do another pair of pants or something like that on how you can move your zipper from one side to the back to suit your liking. If you do not move your zipper and you decide that you want to have pockets, right? You will have what is considered a zipper on the side pockets. So I showed you that I cut out pockets for this pattern. However, I completely forgot to move the zipper. So in the sew along, you will see I did not add pockets because I do not like a pocket right next to my zipper. It's just not what I want, okay? You can do it, but it's a lot of work, okay? And then sometimes your pockets can be not functioning. So I just left them out. But if you want to do pockets for this, you're going to definitely have to move that zipper. Now, my thought process for this is if you decide to do pockets and move the zipper, instead of doing a yoke front and a yoke back, create a waistband, which I'm going to drop how to create a waistband and put it on your, I think it was Butterick 6718 where I drafted a waistband. You could do the same thing, follow that video on how to put the waistband on. Then that way you still have your pants, you move the zipper to the back and you just added a waistband onto your pants as normal. And you would do the same thing to close out your waistband. Nothing different, easy to do. I'll make sure I'll drop that video in the description box below, as well as on the end screen on how to draft a waistband for Butterick 6718. It's the same method that you would do for these pants as well. All right, recommendations. Would I recommend this pattern to others? Absolutely, which is why I did a sew along for a new look 6532. I hope you enjoyed this pattern review. Now that I am done with the pattern review, let's go ahead and get to the sew along. Hey you guys, welcome to yet another one of my fabulous sew-alongs, and this time it is still part of Hot Girl Summer for New Look patterns, okay? So I decided, now you guys know I did some batch cutting and all that good stuff, and this is one of the patterns that I showed you in the video where I was batch cutting. So I did batch cut New Look 6532, but I also batch cut New Look 67, I think it's 6779, but I didn't show you the other two patterns that I cut out to batch cut. I'll show you at a little later time because I want to get these sew-alongs to you guys ASAP. Now, some of them will roll over into July only because I have some commitments that I need to meet as well. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. This is the sew along New Look 6532. I'm going to be doing the pants, which is view C. I'm not interested in view B or view A for this pattern because I'm going to be doing another pattern to go with the pants, okay? So this pattern only has 4 pattern pieces, so write it down. Go to simplicity.com. See if you're able to get this pattern for minimum $3.99 with taxes about $4.35 if depending on your state and your sales tax percentage, okay? Now, let's go ahead and talk about a little bit about this sew along, and let's first get into the sewing toolkit, which you guys know I have a video of the sewing toolkit. The sewing toolkit is everything you will need to sew any of my patterns. So the only thing I'm going to say is go to that video, see what's in that sewing toolkit, and then come back here. I'm going to actually drop it in the description box below to the sewing toolkit, as well as on the end screen. Now for this project, looking at the back in terms of the notions, the only thing you're going to need, now it doesn't say this, but actually it does. You're going to need 1 7-inch invisible zipper. Now, my zippers are normally longer, but I did have a 7 to 9 inch zipper. Now, preferably, I rather go with 9 to 12 inches because Sometimes I like to make my zipper a little longer than what is on the pattern. Now, I did measure the pattern of where the zipper would go, and it's actually 9 inches. So with that being said, I would definitely say get a zipper at 12 inches to make sure that the zipper pull goes all the way down to 9 inches and you don't have a gap or a gape or anything like that. All right, so that's just a tip for you. All right. So now that we talked about the sewing toolkit and the notions that you will need in order to complete this project, let's go ahead and get into the pattern instructions. So let's talk about a little bit about the pattern instructions. Like I mentioned, I will be doing view C for this one with a waistband. Y'all know that your girl love a waistband instead of a facing piece. Okay. Now there is a yoke front and a yoke back, which conceals that waistband. So that's what gives you your waistband. Instead of a waistband all the way around. Now, if you do not want to do the yoke front, yoke back, take your waist measurement and then cut that twice. So if your waist measurement, for example, is 34 inches, right? Like mine, I would measure a piece of paper 34 inches by however high you want. Normally I go with 2 inches. So I would measure all the way across 34 inches across and then up and down 2 inches. But also make sure you add seam allowance. Now the seam allowance is up to you. You could do a 1/2 inch seam allowance or a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, if you are using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm gonna say if your waist measurement is 34, you need to add 1 more inch to accommodate for the 1/2 inch seam allowance on right side and left side, okay? Now, when it's sewn together, it's going to be 34 inches, okay? So, if your waist measurement, let's say 38 inches, you need to make that line all the way across 39 inches. With the height, if you want to use 2 inches, you need to add 1 inch for height. So you would measure across. I'm just going to use my waist measurement of 34. So I would measure across 35 inches. That's 34 plus 1 inch of ease, or I should say seam allowance, I should say. And then up and down would be 3 inches, simply because that 1 inch is going to be removed because of the seam allowance being 1/2 inch, okay? So that's the measurement I would cut for myself. Now, one's going to be used for the waistband, the other one's going to be used as facing piece, okay? Now, I'm not doing that, but I could kind of show you what that would look like, okay, in this video. I will be using pattern piece 13, 14, 15, and 16, where I will be doing the yoke front and the yoke back, all right? Now that we talked about that, let's get into the instructions a little bit. So this one is relatively easy to do, and that's why I'm doing the sew along, providing it for you. So I mean, like, there's only like 10, 11 steps, 13 steps, okay? But you guys know I'm going to do a lot of this cut down. So what we're going to do is we're going to stay stitch the front and back pieces, which is 13 and 14. We're going to make our darts in the front and the back at the same time. After we do that, we're going to sew our inseam, from our inseam to our crotch seams. Then sew one side of your pants leg all the way down. The other one is going to be sewn from a little underneath the notch all the way down, like you see in step number 5. From there, we're going to go ahead and construct our yoke front and back piece, add in the zipper, and then do our facing, which would be the other portion of your yoke front and back pattern piece, which is step number 11. After that, we're going to go ahead and close it out, understitch our facing, and then go ahead and do our hem. So that's only 14 steps, but you guys know that your girl's going to try to get it done in about 8 to 10 steps instead. So without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about these pattern pieces and get started with the sewing. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the pattern pieces you will need in order to construct New Look 6532, which is the pattern of the day that we're going to be sewing up. So the first pattern piece you're going to need is pattern piece number 13, which is the front for view C, which is the pants. Now I have already sized up my pattern. I have a complete video on how to size up the pattern. All I did was at the hip area, I added 1.5 inches to give me enough room that I need, because size 18 is very, very small. It will not fit your girl's bootay. So I had to size it up at the hip area, and I sized it all the way up, all the way through to the waist, okay? So I just added 1.5 inches to the side seam. That's where you're seeing that 1.5 inches. If you looked at my video when I batch cut, you will see that I was making that adjustment to this pattern in that video. Also, I transferred my darts. You have a dart that's going to be, you're gonna have darts in the front and in the back, so you need to transfer all 4 of those as well. Make sure you transfer all your notches and your dots as well. All right, so this is pattern piece number 13. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 14, which is the back. Same thing, make sure you transfer your dots, your notches, and your darts for sure. Also, I added what I did to the front, I did to the back as well. I added 1.5 inches at the waist and at the hip. So I wrote it on here so I can remember to tell you guys that I added 1.5 inches from the waistline, well, at the very top, and then 1.5 inches at the hip. Now, if for whatever reason, when you measure the yoke front and back piece, it doesn't need to be sized up, then don't do this step, okay? Because your waist is going to be right up here where you're going to be attaching. I needed to add to mine, so that's why I added 1.5 inches to my pattern piece. But make sure you measure in all your pattern pieces like I have said this before, all right? But once again, this is the back of view C, pattern piece number 14. You need to cut 2 of fabric. Now you need to cut 2 of your front pattern piece, 2 of your back pattern piece as well. Next pattern piece is pattern piece number 15. Now this is your yoke front, and this needs to be cut 2 on the fold of fabric, and then you're going to interface 1. One's going to be your main yoke piece, and the other one's going to serve as your facing piece. All right. Now, one thing that I did, a slight modification, I added 1.5 inches because I wanted it to be a little bit bigger, okay, in terms of how wide I want my yoke to be. And when I fold it over, it's going to be about 2 inches. That's why I went ahead and added 1.5 inches to my the top part of my yoke front, and I did the same thing to the yoke back. I also added 1.5 inches to the side seam of my waist as well. So you need to cut 2 of fabric on the fold of the fabric, and then interface 1 and cut that on the fold as well. This is pattern piece number 15. And the last pattern piece that you need to cut is pattern piece number 16, your yoke back. You need to cut 2 on the fold of fabric, 1 on the fold of interfacing. Same thing, I added 1.5 inches to the top to give me a, I should say a higher yoke or waistband. And then I also added 1.5 inches to the side seam. Now those are all the pattern pieces that you will need in order to construct these pants. So let's go ahead and get to sewing. Let's go ahead and do it now. All right, so one thing I want to tell you, and I'm putting it in right here, but you're gonna see this in the sew along. Now, one thing I wanna mention is if you want to sew pockets on your side seam of your pants, one thing I wanna make sure that you know is to leave the center back seam open 7 inches. Now, my pants are pretty much sewn except for the waistband, so I'm gonna show you right now. So if you want to, let me show you the back. Okay, so this is the front. I'm gonna turn it over to the back, move these pockets out of the way. And what you need to do, if you are doing this, is only if you want pockets on the side of your pants, okay? Mine are not going to have side seam pockets. I don't want side seam pockets, not on this one, because this is pretty much fitted through the hips. And I feel like the pockets is going to make, it's gonna like kind of poke out a little bit, and I don't want that look, okay? But if you want pockets on the side of your pants, what you need to do is on the center back, you need to make a marking 7 inches down on your back pattern piece, okay? Once again, on the back pattern piece, you need to make a clipping on your pattern at least 7 inches down. So what happens is when you are sewing your crotch seam, you're not going to sew from that notch all the way up. You're just going to base, okay? All the way up. And you're gonna put your zipper in the center back. What that also means is you're going to sew both side seams from top to bottom. You're not leaving an opening or anything like that for the zipper. All you're doing essentially is moving your zipper from the side seam to the center back, okay? That's all you're doing. It's just a quick style change, okay? And then you would sew your pockets on both the front and the back as we have done before. You could also look at my video, New Look 6781, on how to sew on pockets, okay? So I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that here because in the sew along, you will see how I did not put my pockets in because I realized that I forgot to move my my zipper to the center back instead of the side. And I do not want a zipper and a pocket on the same side. I just didn't want that. So yes, I can do that, but I don't want that, okay? So that's why I am not going to be using my pockets, but in the sew along, just ignore that portion and put it in the center back, okay? So let's go ahead and continue. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Go ahead and grab pattern piece number 13, which is your front. I have already done this, but I'm gonna tell you exactly what I did. So I went ahead and stay stitched. Now, how you're going to stay stitch is you're gonna start at the side seam and go from the side seam all the way to your front, okay? That's where the curve is. So you're gonna start at your side seam using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, regular length stitch. You do not need to back stitch at the beginning. You're just gonna line your edge up with a 1/2 inch and go from the side seam all the way to the front where you have that curve. You're gonna do that on both the front and the back of your pants, okay? I have already done that. Now, after you do that for both your 2 fronts and your 2 backs, the next thing you're gonna start doing is work on your darts. Now, I have done darts so many times on this channel. However, I do realize that I do have a huge number of new subscribers. So I'm gonna show you how to do that now. All right, so what I'm gonna do is go ahead and turn my pants to the side so you're able to see this. Now this is the wrong side of my front pattern piece. I'm gonna turn it this way so you can see and bring it in for you. So this is the front. You're going to do the darts on both fronts and both back pattern pieces. So all you're gonna do is take it to where it match up, grab your pin, and you're gonna pin at that dot. Then you're gonna look to make sure that the back and the front lines up with that. The back and the front of your dart matches up. Just make sure that you are pinning. Look, it goes on that line. So the pin is coming out on that line. And then when I pull it back through, I want to make sure that it's on the line in the front. And it is. So it's lined up. So I'm just going to put like 2 or 3 pins to make sure. I'm going to check again. That's not lined up. So I'm just going to maneuver it, the fabric, to make sure that it's lined up on the back and on the front. All right, so it's lined up in the back, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull it through. Now, so basically you're gonna use a regular length stitch. You're gonna back stitch at the beginning. So on the line, you'll see a white line here for mine because I'm using dark fabric. So I'm just gonna follow that line all the way down to the dot. Now, when I get to the dot, I'm not going to back stitch. I'm just gonna pull up thread and tie 2 or 3 times to create a knot, okay? So back stitch at the beginning, do not back at the end. You're gonna tie 2 or 3 times of thread, okay, to secure your dart in place, all right? So let's go ahead and do that now. And make sure you do that on both of your front pattern pieces and your back pattern pieces now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have so you should have this too. So now that you have your front and your back pattern pieces or fabric, you have it stay stitched all the way across. You went ahead and did your darts. So now you're gonna press your dart towards the curve edge. So I'm gonna press it here. So I'm gonna show you on camera the way that you're supposed to press your darts. Now, I have my front pattern pieces. You're gonna do the same thing to your back. Now, I have already done my back, but I'm gonna bring my tabletop ironing board, okay, just like this, so you're able to see it, okay? Now, I'm just gonna lay it on the table so you're able to see this. And I'm just going to show you the direction that you're going to be pressing your dart in, okay? So let me grab my iron. Now, I'm not gonna be using my Olisa iron, but I have an Olisa iron as well. But what you're gonna do is, this is my front pattern piece. You're gonna press it this way to where this portion needs to be facing the curve edge, okay? So this is my curve edge right here. And I'm just gonna press and hold. And just put some steam there as well. All right? And that's it. You're going to do that to the other pant leg as well. So I'm gonna grab the other front pant leg. I'm gonna put it down, and I'm going really slow so you guys can understand, because I know a couple of people said that I talk really, really fast, and I do apologize about that. That's not my intent, but some things we have done several times on this channel, okay? So you're definitely gonna have to go back to some of my earlier videos to see what we have already done on the channel that I am skipping. All right, so now that I have that pressed, you're gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the back pattern pieces so we can start working on our inseam. So just to kind of give you a gist of what you need to do to the back pattern pieces. So I'm gonna grab one back pattern piece, and what you're gonna do now, just make sure you know that the back pattern piece, the curve is right here. So you're gonna fold this over to the left of me, and then you're just gonna press, okay? And that's it. You're gonna do that to the other pant leg as well. So do all 4 of your darts, press them down. Now, because I already did that, you need to make sure you are doing it with your seam roll. So now, I have already done this, so I'm just gonna tell you, you need to put it on your seam roll, press it to the direction that it needs to go, and then put some, you know, steam on it and do it that way, all right? So let's go ahead and do the next step, which would be our inseam. All right, so now that we have our darts done, go ahead and grab one back pattern piece, which is pattern piece number 4, and then you want to grab one front pattern piece, which is pattern piece number 13. So I have one back, and now I'm going to grab one front, and make sure you have right sides together, okay? And then move the other front and the back out of the way. Now, I'm going to show you this. This is my front pattern piece, like you could see. It says number 13 front. Let me show you that. And then when I flip it over, this is pattern piece number 14, which is the back, okay? So you need one front, one back. And we're going to do our inseam. Now, our inseam is the inner part of your leg, is what we're going to be stitching up, okay? So you have a notch, so make sure you are pinning at your notch right here. And then you're gonna pin all the way up to the crotch area, okay? So just make sure you are pinning from the hem up to your crotch. So go ahead and pin your inseams now. All right, so now that I have the inseam pin, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way through your inseam, and back stitch at the end. Once you do that, go ahead and finish off your seam allowance, all right? You're gonna do that to both of your pant legs now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the inseams done for both pants leg, you see, here's the inseam on this one and the inseam on that one. Now what you're going to do is open it out just like this. Now you need to know what sides is your front and your back. So right here, this side right here, which is my left side, is the front. And you're gonna take the other pant leg. You should have your pants looking like a U right here, because we're getting ready to do the crotch seam, okay? So your back, where you have 14, should be on the right side, and then your front should be on the left side, okay? So that's what I have going on right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my seam allowance is towards the back. That's to the right-hand side. And I'm going to pin, making sure that both seam allowance is facing the back instead of the front. I'm going to pin right there at the seam. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that it matches up. And I'm going to pin at the notch in the front. So that's this notch right here, because I'm going to pin the front, and I'm going to pin around the entire crotch seam. So go ahead, make sure you are matching up your notches, and then you're going to pin all the way around. Now I'm going to move my fabric down a little bit so you're able to see me pin all the way around the crotch seam. All right, so go ahead and pin the crotch seam now. Now, one thing I want to mention is make sure you are pinning that the back at the notch as well, and then pin the rest of it all the way up. So go ahead and pin the rest of your crotch seam now. All right, so now that I have the crotch seam pin using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way around the crotch seam. Once you do that, I'm gonna go back in from pretty much where this notch is in the front all the way to the back notch, and I'm going to stitch again, but this time at 3/8. So the first stitch is going to be at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning, and then back, so all the way around and back stitch at the end. The second seam allowance, I'm gonna sew at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm gonna stitch from this notch all the way to the other notch in the back. And that's just to basically reinforce a second time to make sure that I'm not busting those seams if I sit down, okay? And then I'm gonna finish off my crotch curve, okay? So go ahead and do that, back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my crotch curve done right here, I went ahead and I'm gonna zoom this in so you can see it. But I went ahead and stitched, like I said, from that area where you have the notch in the front all the way around to the notch in the back. I stopped about right here, and I went ahead and did a second roll of stitching. Let me bring it up so you can see it. So you'll see that second roll of stitching, okay? Now what we're gonna do is our side seam. So go ahead and open it out. Now I'm gonna put the back pattern piece on the table. So when you open it, you should have the back pattern piece like this, and then you're open it up all the way, and this is your back pattern piece. Then you want to take your front pattern piece, right? And you want to put your front pattern piece on top of your back pattern piece, okay? So this is your front right here, and you put it onto the back, and it resembles pants now, okay? Now, this is where you have options, and when I say you guys have options, you could go ahead and add you could have pockets, add pockets if you want. You need to add them now. Now the pattern does not come with pockets. Now I have drafted pockets for my patterns and stuff like that. However, I'm gonna show you a little quick tip for if you want some pockets, okay? Now I'm going to do this only because I have a little bit of fabric left, and you guys know I'm no fabric left behind, okay? So I'm gonna move this out of my way for just 1 second. Now, you can use whatever pocket pattern piece you want, but because I have already done this pattern and it was still out in my to file section that my daughter needs to file. She's putting up old patterns. I wouldn't even say old patterns. She's putting up patterns that I have already used. I have already did the sew along for or a pattern review for. She's putting them back. It's not many that she needs to put back, but I'm going to be using the pockets because they're pretty deep for this pattern, which is New Look 6781. If you have not seen the sew along for this pattern where I jazzed up the sleeve here, I'll put it up right here, but also drop it in the description box below as well as on the end screen. So I'll be using the pockets for 6781. Now, if you have another New Look pattern, you can go ahead and use a different new look pattern as well for your pocket pattern piece. You could pull a simplicity pattern, you could pull a new look pattern, you could pull a McCall's pattern, you could pull a know me pattern, whatever pattern you want that has a pocket pattern piece. Now, a couple of things I would say is if you're choosing I can't even talk today, I do apologize. If you are choosing a pattern with a pocket pattern piece that's not a new look pattern, I would definitely say make sure that you have this top line right here and this side line. Do not get one where it's curved right here. You can, however, it may be a little tricky, okay? So what I'm gonna do now, I have this folded over. Watch what I'm doing. So I have it folded once, right sides together. I'm gonna fold it again to where I can cut all 4 pieces at the same time, okay? So now it says lining cut 4, but you need 4 pocket pattern pieces, okay? So I'm just gonna go ahead and put my pattern weights down. Now what I'm using, because this has been asked before, what pattern weights that I'm using, I am actually using some coins from my husband's fraternity. Yes, he is in a fraternity. He sells these coins. So I'm just using them for pattern weights. Now, you might be asking what fraternity he's in. He's in Kappa Kappa Psi. So, yeah. So with that being said, I'm just using them because that's what I could use, okay? All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and cut real quick all the way around this pocket pattern piece. You do the same. You only need to make sure that you have 4. Mark the back of the pattern, the wrong side, I should say, of the fabric, so you know what side is the wrong side of the fabric, okay? So now that I have the pocket cut out, make sure you transfer all your knots and your dots and your notches. Well, you know, for this pocket pattern piece, of course, it doesn't have any dots, but make sure you mark all your notches. And this is the pocket pattern piece that we will be using today, or I should say I will be using today, okay? Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure I mark it as well, but go ahead and if you want to do pockets, this is the step where you're going to add the pockets now. If you do not want pockets, just hang tight. Let me add the pockets to the pants, and then you're gonna be sewing up the side seam with me, okay? So without further ado, let's go ahead and get these pockets done. But one thing I wanna make sure that you know is if you are doing the pockets and you want your zipper in the back, you needed to make sure that you do not sew up that crotch seam. However, now I did cut pockets. However, you need to know that the zipper is on the side instead of the back. So one thing I'm gonna say, okay? Now, one thing I'm going to say about this, and I'm going to make sure I put the clip at the very beginning, that if you want to have a zipper, you need to make sure that you put it in the back instead of the sides, which is why I am not going to be using my pocket. I cut it out so you could see that you could go ahead and do pockets because I don't want to have the hassle of doing the pockets and then the zipper right on the same side as my pockets. So I was not thinking of doing pockets when I did this, but one thing you want to do is make sure you move your zipper to the back if you are adding a pocket. Now, I'm saying this now, but I'm also going to put this clip at the very beginning. I'm gonna go ahead and make a clip at the very beginning so you're hearing the same thing at the very beginning before we start sewing up the pants, okay? Now, if you are doing pockets, one more time, you need to make sure that you do not sew up the back seam. You need to make a spacing that's 9 inches down on your back pattern piece. Then you would go ahead and put the pockets on both sides. All right. So I'm not putting pockets on mine because I did not do that, and I'm not going to take everything off. So let's go ahead and skip those pockets. But if you do not know how to put pockets on, the only thing that you're going to do is just like I have done In my previous video, which I am linking, New Look 6781, you would put 2 pocket pieces on the back, 2 pocket pieces on the front, sew them down, finish off your seam allowance, understitch only the front pocket pieces, and then attach them. Okay, so you could go to that video to see how to put on pockets. So now I'm going to go ahead and continue as before, and we're going to go ahead and sew up the side seams. Now, first things first, when you're sewing up the side seam, you need to determine what side you want your zipper. Okay, now I want my zipper on the left hand side because I am right-handed. Okay, I don't want to be zipping up and down on the right hand side if I'm right-handed. I'd rather do that on the left hand side. So now this is the front pattern piece facing me. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to where I know what side I want my pants to be on. And what that means is basically make sure you are looking at your pants. Now this is the front on the table. This is the back facing up. So I'm gonna act as if I'm putting my pants on right now, right? What side do I want it on? I want my zipper on this side. So I'm gonna put a pin there so I know when I start sewing, this is the side that I want my pants on, okay? So put a pin there, and then you want to pin the other side that the zipper is not going to be on, okay? Now, before you start sewing it, you need the side that you're going to be putting your zipper on. I highly advise you to go ahead and serge from the top down about 9 inches where your zipper, depending on how long your zipper is, really. But you want to serge. Do not, make sure that your knife is off. Serge from the top down about 9 inches in order on the side that you're going to put your zipper on, okay? So do that and then pin the other side. I'm going to show you how to do this, but first determine what side you want your zipper on now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have this side completely done of the side seam, the other side I'm going to go ahead and pin all the way up, matching up my notches that I have right here. So I'm going to match up those notches and pin all the way down. So I'm going to match up that notch, pin all the way down. Now, I'm going to leave the very top portion unpinned, okay? So I'm not pinning up here. I'm just pinning from my notch all the way down, okay? Now, I'm going to pin the opposite direction because I like to go from the hem all the way up. So that's just my preference of how I pin my pants, but you don't have to do that. You could go from the top down, whatever suits your boat and suits your fancy, okay? So just go ahead and pin the side seam now. All right, so now that I have the side seams pinned from the hem all the way up to this notch right here, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, I'm gonna back stitch at the hem. And so all the way, now I'm going to go all the way to the single notch right here. But instead of me stopping at that single notch, I made a marking. It's like a marking about, I want to say about, that's probably like 2 inches. Let me see how far apart that is. That is about 2 inches. So 2 inches down from that notch, I made a marking, and I'm going to put another pin right here. And that's where I'm going to stop sewing. And then I'm going to switch from a regular length stitch and baste all the way up. Now, one thing that I mentioned is make sure that you measure how long it is, okay? Because I think the yoke piece is about 2 inches. And with that being said, you only need to go down 7 inches, okay? So my 7 inches is right where my 10, well, the two pins are. So that's where I'm gonna go to. So therefore, it's about 2 inches from your notches, your notch, I should say, not notches, even though it's more than one, but you want to go down 2 inches from where that notch is on the side seam and put 2 pins there, and you're going to sew from your hem to those 2 pins and then switch to a basting stitch and baste all the way up. All right, go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the side where the zipper is going to go, I have that sewn all the way up to that notch. I'm sorry, 2 inches below the notch, and I created like another notch right here. So I'm able to finish off the seam allowance together. Now, from the top up, it's just base stitch. So from here, let me bring it up so you can see. It's just basted from that notch up. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, now I'm going to press this seam allowance open. So let me get my little tabletop ironing board. And I'm gonna grab my iron, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to press this seam open. So I'm just going to kind of put it like this on the ironing board to press the seam open. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take strips of interfacing. You guys know, if you guys have been following me for any time, you guys know that I am a girl who loves to stabilize her zipper area, okay? So I'm just going to put some interfacing where my zipper is on both sides. So I'm just going to put that there, and I'm going to put a little bit of steam there so I'm able to stabilize this area. Because I did that side, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and use my scissors, being careful to not to rip a hole in it. Okay, so this did not stick very well. So I'm going to go ahead and do it on my big ironing board instead of right here, and then I'll come back and show you that. So go ahead and put interfacing on the wrong side of your zipper area down. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the this sewn, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and undo the area, because I have my interfacing done on the side that I'm going to have my zipper at. Now, I can't find my seam ripper at the moment. It's right by my sewing machine, to be honest with you, but I'm just going to go ahead and rip out without literally ripping them, but I'm just going to cut out the basting stitches right now. Now, be careful. Do not do what I'm doing, because you don't want to rip your pants. You don't want to make an accidental hole, but you want to open it out. Okay, so this is what it looks like. I have my interfacing, so it's stabilized right there where the zipper is going to go. Yes, I opened it because now what we are going to do is we're going to go ahead and do our yoke piece. So you want that open so you could go ahead and attach your yoke. Okay, so move your pants out of the way. Grab pattern piece 15 and 16, and you want to do, and you're going to be doing the same thing essentially, but what you want to do is go ahead and grab the ones that are interfaced, okay? So you have some interfacing, so make sure you know which one is 15 and which one is 16. Now, so this one I did mark. Let me grab my pen to mark the other one. All right, so this is number 15 right here, which number 15 is the front and number 16 is the back. Make sure you mark that on your front and back pieces so you don't get confused. And then what we're gonna do is with right sides together. So you have this. Now this right here is my pattern piece number 15. And this is pattern piece number 16. So with right sides together, what you're going to do is you're going to pin, and you should have like a notch on one side. Okay. Now, one thing that I just noticed from this pattern piece, it doesn't give you a notch on this side. Okay. So you're supposed to be sewing up the side. Now, this is how I'm going to make it easy for me. I'm going to take pattern piece number 15, which is this one right here. And this is pattern piece number 16. I'm going to put 15 on top, and this is 15, and I'm going to go ahead and sew on the right side of my pants. And The reason why is because it doesn't have a notch for you to tell if it needs to be that part or not. And I know you're looking like, Rochelle, why doesn't it not have interfacing all the way down? It's because it's going to be pressed open. So I don't need all that interfacing, to be honest with you. And I just didn't feel like putting more interfacing right there, just to be honest, right? Now, I'm going to go to the sewing machine and using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end, sew it down and press the seam allowance open. Go ahead and do that now, and you're going to do the exact same thing on your facing pieces, which is the black that I have. So this is pattern piece number 16. This is pattern piece number 15. Right sides together. I'm going to pin and do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to pin all the way down. And so using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end, and then press the seam allowance open. Go ahead and do that on your main pattern piece and your facing pieces now. All right, so what you want to do is go ahead and grab pattern piece number 15 and 16, which are your yoke piece. Now, what I want to say is grab your pants, okay? And I have it with right sides out. Now, this is the front facing up on the table. This is the back laying down on the table, but I have the right side out. This is what you need to do, okay? Now, what you need to do is, this is the front, so I want to make sure that the front, make sure this is my number 15. When I pin it, the side seam match up with the side seam that doesn't have the zipper. So you need to make sure you know how to pin it all the way around. Now, if you notice, I have it upside down to where this portion, the bottom part, is going to be attached to the pair of pants, okay? So now, depending on what side you have your zipper on, what I'm going to say is if you are rocking your zipper on the right side, then you need to pin right sides together where you have pattern piece number 15, which is right here. You need to pin it on the left side. So let me move these pants out the way. So if you, once again, I'm going to put it up on the screen. If you are wearing your zipper on the right side of you, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, you need to pin right sides together. This is pattern piece number 15, which is the front, and this is pattern piece number 16, which is the back. With pattern piece number 15 facing up on the table, you need to pin on the left-hand side, which is this portion. You're going to do that for your main piece as well as your facing piece. Now, if you are rocking your zipper on the left-hand side like I am doing, you need to pin your main fabric and your facing piece on the right-hand side like you see me doing here, okay? So my pins will be on the right-hand side, and I'm going to sew using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. I'm going to do that for both facing pieces. So go ahead and sew whichever side, depending on how you are wearing your pants now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and stitched the main yoke piece and the yoke facing, what you see here, I'm going to move that off to the side, grab my pants with right side out. And if you notice that I have the, let's make sure I have the back pattern piece on the table. This is my front that I'm holding right here. And here is my zipper area, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is take my yoke. Now, I have my yoke marked with a 15. So let me turn it this way so you're able to see that. I marked it with a 15, and the 15 symbolizes the front of my pants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match up that side seam and make sure that my seam allowance is facing the back, and I'm going to match that up just like this, and I'm going to pin, okay? So I'm going to pin that, and I'm going to pin along that front, okay? So make sure you pin Make sure you have that press edge for the zipper out, and you're going to pin. Okay, so I'm just going to pin across the top of my pants. Okay, so go ahead and pin that now. All right, so now that I have the front of the yoke piece pinned, I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and I'm going to do the exact same thing to the back. I'm going to make sure I open out that area that's going to have the zipper there. I am going to pin that and then pin the rest of the yoke to my back pattern piece now, okay? So go ahead and finish pinning the back yoke to your pants now. Go ahead and do that now. One thing I want to mention is that I forgot to mention is you have 2 notches in the back. Make sure you match up the notch there, and make sure you match up the notch there right here as well, and pin, and then finish sewing all the, I'm not sewing, but pinning all the way around now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have it pinned all the way around, now what I'm gonna do, you could do however you want for your pants, but what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start on the side seam. Using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, I'm gonna back stitch right here at the side seam, so all the way to the front, and then back stitch at the end. Then I'm gonna flip it over on this side, and then still starting at the side seam, I'm gonna back stitch there, still using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then sew all the way around the back as well. Now, if you wanna go from one end all the way around to the other end, that's up to you. It's just I want to prevent any type of stretching and making it kind of move or anything. So that's what I like to do, but do whatever suits your fancy, all right? So go ahead and sew your yoke onto your pants now. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the yoke on, now we're gonna go ahead and put the yoke facing on. So go ahead and grab your yoke facing. Now for my yoke facing, if you notice that it's just some solid black fabric from the stash, of course, but at this point you can accent it if you want. You could use, you know, fabric, you can use whatever you want, but I just decided to accent it. And all you're going to do is, with right sides together, I'm just going to pin the facing onto the yoke, okay? So what you want to do now, one thing that you definitely need to do, you could do it now or do it right after you pin it on, but you're going to have to trim this piece down, the seam allowance down from when you put the yoke onto the pants. So do not forget to do that, okay? Now, what you want to do is, with right sides together, make sure you are pinning the same way that you just did, and you're just going to pin the top portion of the yoke facing to the yoke, just like that. So you see the front, you're going to pin the front, okay? So just pin all the way around now, and make sure you are matching up the side seam as well. So I'm just going to match up that side seam and pin all the way around also. So go ahead and pin all the way around the yoke facing to the yoke now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the yoke facing attached to the yoke, now I'm gonna do it the same way that I just attached the yoke. Using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a regular length stitch, I'm gonna start at the side seam, back stitch at the beginning, so all the way to the back, and then flip it over, and then starting at the side seam, so the opposite direction. All right, so go ahead and sew your yoke on. After you do that, go ahead and trim the yoke facing and yoke down, and then you're gonna trim the seam allowance where you have the yoke pinned onto your pants also. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the facing on and I have it trimmed down, now one thing I want to mention, if you went ahead and put the facing on like I did, I forgot to tell you to put your zipper on. So what you're going to do is, I'm going to turn this wrong side out to where both the right side of your side seams are facing. So let me turn it wrong side out. And what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and put your zipper area right sides together, and you're going to pin. All right. So I'm going to make sure that I have the seam allowance pinned all the way up to that facing piece. Now, one thing I want to mention is do not pin this facing piece. That's why I went ahead and unpicked right there where the facing piece is supposed to start becoming attached. So I'm moving my black pieces out of the way, these two black pieces. So let me just kind of unpick just a little bit more so it's out of the way to where the zipper will not catch. So I'm just going to unpick that for just a second. And I'm sorry that I forgot to tell you to go ahead and do the zipper. So I'm just going to pin from the top down to that area where the zipper goes. And I'm going to base at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, one thing I want to mention to you is for the seam allowance where your zipper goes, the seam allowance needs to be pushed up towards your yoke piece instead of down towards your pants, okay? So make sure that this seam allowance right here is pushed up towards your yoke, okay? And then I'm just going to pin all the way down just like so, all right? So go ahead and pin this in place so you could go ahead and sew your zipper. Once again, I want to apologize that I went ahead and put on the facing before sewing on my zipper. And then after I did that, I realized I have not even put my zipper in. So that's why I pulled it back just a little bit so it gives me enough room, 5/8 of an inch, you know, to go ahead and put my zipper in. All right. So now go to the sewing machine using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and a basting stitch. You're going to start at the beginning and sew all the way down using a basting stitch. Then press your seam allowance open. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and attached the zipper, so I went ahead and installed the zipper. So I pressed the seam allowance open. I went ahead and basted the zipper on. Now I'm gonna take my seam ripper and rip out the basting stitches where that zipper is. You guys have seen me put on invisible zippers, so I'm just doing the same method that I would normally do for my invisible zipper. So go ahead, rip open those basting stitches, and then you're gonna go ahead and unzip and do the regular stitches. Finish off your zipper area, okay? So go ahead and open out those basting stitch, get rid of the basting stitch, and make sure you are definitely, you know, where you stopped the basting stitch at and go from there, okay? So go ahead and do that now. I'm just gonna go ahead and finish opening up my basting stitch, rip the basting stitch out, sew my permanent stitch on my zipper teeth, and I'll show you what that looks like. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the basting stitches ripped out with my seam ripper, next thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and open up my zipper. It is zipping up fabulous, no issues. I'm gonna go ahead and finish my zipper area by sewing close to the teeth using a invisible zipper foot or a regular, well, you should have one that came with your machine. So just go ahead and finish that off. And then we're gonna go ahead and attach our facing. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the zipper completely secured, it is zipping up, giving me life up and down, okay? So now I'm gonna pull the zipper back a little bit. Now what I'm going to do is finish off this facing piece that I originally attached and had to unpick. I'm just going to basically take the facing that's not stitched, put it over the zipper area, and basically just stitch right there, okay? So let me grab my pins right quick. And what I'm going to do is just pin right here, and using, of course, I'm just gonna finish off where I already stitched, okay? So that's all I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do that on both sides and then trim down the zipper area that's attached. That's a little bit more, okay? So I'm gonna do this side. Once again, I'm just going to go ahead and pin the facing onto that zipper area. Let me grab some more pins. And I'm just going to stitch along where I stopped stitching right here. I'm just going to stitch all the way across, okay? So if you did the same thing that I'm doing, you're just going to start where that stitching stopped and then just stitch all the way across and then trim off the top part of your zipper if you have any excess or extension, all right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the zipper area done, this is what it's looking like, and that's what it should be looking like. I'm gonna go ahead and trim off this excess zipper up at the top now that this part is completely secured. All right, so I'm gonna trim that off at the top because that's just excess zipper. So now the next thing I'm gonna do is this portion right here, I'm going to pin it onto itself. Now, one thing that I wanna make sure that you do before you pin this, at this top edge right here of your facing, you want to fold in, I wanna say, I would sew all the way around 5/8, a basting stitch, 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then press it in and then trim it down 3 to 3/8. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna use a basting stitch, so at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around on your facing piece, trim it down to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance and give it a press under. Then that way it's gonna look like this. And then when you attach it, it should be pressed up. So this edge should be pressed up, and then you're gonna sew right here as close to the zipper teeth without sewing on the zipper teeth, okay? I hope that makes sense. Let me explain it one more time. You're going to create a basting stitch on this edge, right? 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Press it under. Once you press it under, you want to trim down to 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. After you trim it down, it's going to be folded something like this, and you're gonna keep it folded. And right here where you have this line where you attach your yoke to your pants, you want to, that press edge is going to be right there at that seam, and you're going to stitch from the seam all the way up as close to the zipper teeth as possible without sewing on the zipper teeth. You're gonna do that on both sides, all right? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and closed up the zipper area, now what we're gonna do, and make sure you grab your point turner, we're going to go ahead and turn this area out. You see that nice clean finish that you have right there? Boom, 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 it's looking good. Go ahead and turn out the other side as well. And if you need your point turner, go ahead and use your point turner to poke it out. So let me grab my point turner. And what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead, make sure you do not do this too hard, and poke a hole in your pants that you worked so hard for, okay? And now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna check my zipper area. Boom, boom, boom. It zips up really, really good, which is nice. So now what I'm gonna do is turn it to the inside. Now, if you want to add your label, decide on what side you want to add your label. It's completely up to you, but the only thing that's left to do, you have two things to do. First things first, you need to understitch. So you need to make sure that your seam allowance is pressed up towards your facing, which is what's the black side. And you're going to understitch at 1/4 of an inch as far as you can go, all right? After you do that, it's going to turn to the inside like this. I'm just going to kind of show you. You want to make sure that this seam allowance is pressed up. And then you want to go about 1/8 of an inch away, and it's going and sew all the way around, okay? So I'm going to do my understitching, and then I'm going to go ahead and pin and sew my facing onto my pants, okay? So let me go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what it looks like. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have the understitch done, that's where you see the orange stitching right here. That's my understitch. I went ahead and pressed it all the way around. So make sure that your seam allowance is pressed up from the pants and the yoke, press up towards the yoke piece. And what I'm gonna do now is I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my facing, I didn't press on this side, but you get my drift. But make sure that you are pressing, and make sure that you have about 1/8 of an inch. And then I like to pin on the inside and baste all the way across on the inside to make sure that it's going to, what's the word I want to use? Catch. And then I go over it again with a regular length, a regular stitch on the other side when I'm stitching in the ditch. It's just to make sure that this catch all the way around and I don't have to have any type of gaps or anything. So that's why I first pin on the inside and then I baste all the way around. So go ahead and pin on the inside of your facing. You're facing to your pants. So I'm just going to make sure I pin all the way around on the inside. And then after you baste on the inside, you want to stitch in the ditch. Now, make sure you press all of this around before you stitch, okay? So I'm going to make sure I do that before I stitch to make sure everything is good all the way around. All right, so go ahead and finish pinning and then go to your sewing machine and baste and then slip stitch in the ditch. All right, so go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and based on the inside, after I based on the inside, I went ahead and top stitched all the way around to secure my facing on the inside. Now, the only thing that I need to do is I'm gonna take my seam ripper and clean up this basting stitch all the way around. I'm going to get rid of that. I do have some cleaning up to do. For that, I'm going to give this a good press. I already tried mine on and it looks pretty good. And if you notice that side zipper is zipping up with no issues whatsoever. It is invisible. That's what you want. I have a nice, lovely inside black for some accent. I went ahead and put in my daughter's label because look, she has a lot of labels and that's what she handed me, okay? So that looks good. The only thing that's left for you to do is go ahead and hem the bottom of your pants. Now, I think, so I'm gonna do a double fold. I'm gonna fold once and then fold up again. I think the seam allowance is 1 1/4, I believe. Let me look at the instructions and see. So according to the pattern piece, it's 1 1/4. So what you want to do is press in 1/4 of an inch. So what you're going to do is press in 1/4 of an inch first, and then press up 1 inch from there, okay? And then stitch on the right-hand side all the way around. And then once you do that, you are all done with your pants. Just go ahead and give it a wash. Press it and then rock it and put some photos together, and that's what we're gonna do with this one. All right, but once again, we just finished doing the sew, or I just finished doing the sew along, or you sewed with me, whatever way that you did this. This is New Look 6532 View C for the pants. If you make these pants, do not forget to tag me on social media, Instagram, or here on YouTube at Rochelle.Handmade.Designs. So I hope you enjoyed these pants. I hope you enjoyed the sew along. Stay tuned as I will be making a button down shirt to go along with these pants. So until next time, keep sewing. All right, so there you have it. That is the complete pattern review and sew along. I hope you enjoyed. And if you make these pants, New Look 6532, do not forget to tag me in your videos or on your posts on Instagram at Rochelle.Handmade.Designs for me to reshare your post in my stories or reshare you here on YouTube. Just stay locked to the channel in order to see that. Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, keep sewing.